I'm in charge of the design of the program and the running of the program and the student, experience side of things. Yuka Gray, who is our fantastic program coordinator, will be there to, facilitate all your assessment submissions, let you know the deadlines and kind of the operational side of the program. And then we also have Ansel Singh, who is our innovation coordinator and facilitator for the program. So he'll be with you when you're doing your online session. So he'll be facilitating that online session and helping, the session speaker. So this is where we sit with our Human Potential for the Digital Economy course. So it's a PG Cert Level 8 certificate. It's for, big thinkers who wants to, engage in a technology-led future. And then our other postgraduate certificate offering is the Connected Environments course, which is also Level 8. It's more analytically driven, so it's all about IoT and data and how you use the insights from IoT and data to drive better business outcomes. So both these postgraduate certificates has a pathway into our Masters of Technological Futures offering, which is a Level 9 course. And if you're interested in seeing how that pathway looks like, please get in touch with me and I can run you through how the two programs kind of feed into that. But the Master's program is what we call for, change makers. It is very, a practical approach. You're solving, a problem and you're looking at how can you use emerging disruptive technologies to solve that problem. So this course is really designed for people who want to develop that in-depth knowledge on technologies and how to learn to leverage those technologies for change and how you can implement those technologies for a career and a life change. It will allow you to gain perspectives on where your values lie and, how those relationships will form and what the technologies kind of mean for you. It will allow you to learn, new approaches to respond to emerging disruptive technologies and business challenges and societal changes. It will give you the confidence that you need to have those, board level kind of conversations about emerging disruptive technologies and suggest, strategies in response to digitization. You will also gain, obviously an NZQA accredited, Level 8 qualification. You'll also get the in-depth knowledge of forces shaping our work and lives in the global and New Zealand context. You'll gain the practical skills to using insight and foresights to plan for, constant change that we face in the world. It will build your capabilities to create, lead, and implement, innovative digital technologies and strategies in your workplace. It will also give you tools and techniques that can be applied to solve, complex problems, whatever the focus is for the postgraduate certificate. You will also gain a professional network. So we get subject matter experts in to deliver our sessions, so that will extend your professional network in New Zealand and overseas. You will build meaningful, friendships and relationships, and hopefully our panelists can speak to that as well. We are TFL, TML, whānau. You'll be part of that, ecosystem as well. And again, as I mentioned before, it's a pathway into that master's program as well. So basically how the program is structured, there's 4 core courses that run through the entire 32-week program. One is focused on digitization and adaptation. So what we mean by this is when we cover sessions on, platform business models and the collective economy, circular economy, innovation, and analogy thinking. And then the other course is all around future, insight. So we cover sessions on, role of AI in everyday lives, connected environments, data. So we bring in that IoT piece a little bit here. Robotics, process automation, decentralizing, blockchain and transparency. What does that look like? And visual technology. So really that emerging disruptive technology piece as well. We also look at contemporary organizational ecosystems. We touch on kaupapa Māori and what that means in, modern organizational structures, diversity and culture building, future of food, fintech, banks of the future, future of the workplace, those more organizational level, disruptors. And then we bring it all back to human potential. What does this mean for you, your capacity and capability building as a person? So we have sessions on growth mindset, critical thinking, design thinking, leadership frameworks, and agile. And so essentially these 4 courses will run right across the 32-week program. The 32 weeks are, broken down to 2 16-week blocks. And the first 16 weeks, the assessments are all focused on what does digitization look like? So we give you, a case study example, and then you're given the opportunity to bring that back into, how are you going to apply that into your context? What does this mean for you? And then the second 16-week block is focused on, now that you know how digitization has impacted, a certain industry or what that context means to you, you look at, so now what? What are the strategies that you can implement in response to digitization? And the overall goal for the PG Cert is to come to a theoretical but actionable plan that you can actually take forward within your organization to say, I've uncovered this. These are the strategies that I want to implement. Let's figure out how we do that. Or it's, thinking about an industry that you want to move into. It's kind of deep diving and getting to know that industry really well and looking at, okay, so where's my impact? How do I shift into that industry? And how can I, provide value to that industry based on, what I have learned? And so the program structure, it's 32 weeks. So you have 2-hour live online sessions every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Throughout the 32 weeks, you have 4 full-day face-to-face workshops on a Monday. So obviously on the weeks that you have your face-to-face workshop, you will not be having your 2-hour live online session. All the details of the dates and everything are included in the program handbook on the website. So I would suggest, having a look at that. But the full day sessions are, 9:30 to 4 p.m. on site. You come in and we facilitate those on-site sessions with those subject matter experts as well. And then we think it's about 1 to 2 days of self-directed learning. And this could mean, you using that time to, go through flipped learning material that your session speaker may want you to read before the session itself or even after the session, and also working on your assessments. And then we have a weekly office hour on Tuesday, so half an hour before your session actually starts, where myself or one of the assessment team will be joining that call and there to kind of answer any of the questions that you have, either about an upcoming assessment or any of the feedback that you've gotten in your recent assessment. So that's kind of like the support structure as well. And I know we get this question asked a lot. What does, graduate outcomes look like? So, it could be that proposal for your current workplace or, a crafted idea for a new business. I've featured some of our, past students, and some of these stories are available on our blog, posts on our website. So Nikki Gibson, she was from our last cohort. She is a career consultant. So what she took away from this program is, the design thinking principles and like around human-centered design. And she actually developed an intentional life design program. So she used her consultancy, she developed this program, and this is something that she works with organizations to kind of, be involved with. And we have Kushla Henry, who is a content marketer. She used this program to really understand diversity in business and what those societal changes look like, and to get a true, deep understanding of that. And then she looked at developing a strategic business and community partnership that would help combat fake news. So that's very much part of her current, work that she was involved with. And then we have people like Rachel Lang, who is, quite different to who we expect to, sign up for the program. She's a dancer, she's an actress, a yoga teacher, a fitness instructor. And so she really used her strengths in creative thinking and adaptive mindset and using movement and dance and, bringing that, her human impact into what she wanted to develop within the program. So she looked at what does creativity in the workplace look like by using movement. So she developed this very simple but very effective, a set of like a card deck that then she can go into workplaces and kind of implement, creativity. And then we have Gordon Johnson, who is a business analyst, but he used his personal life experiences being a diabetic as the focus, as the context for this program. So he really leaned on, the health tech space, the diversity and inclusion space to look at, can you develop a culturally appropriate application to help disadvantaged communities who are suffering from diabetes. So it was a very personal journey for him because the more he researched into that topic, he just couldn't believe the support that was available for these disadvantaged communities. So hopefully that selection of, student stories kind of gives you a showcase of, how diverse each of your projects could look like, and, the strengths that people kind of used from the program offering and how they've used those, subjects and kind of turned into something that really matters to them and really focused on their human impact and how do you use, digital technologies to kind of, and non-digital technologies as well to kind of, drive that change. And so it's my absolute pleasure now to invite our two panelists who are alumni. So Nikki Taylor from Cohort 1, come on, join me. And then we have Jerry Glover from Cohort 2. So please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you so much for making the time. So we'll just have a chat, and I know that's probably a lot of information as well. So through the Q&A session, you get to ask your questions, and at the end, we'll open up the floor to any questions, and then I can deep dive into any of the program structural stuff that you might be thinking about as well. And Amanda, if you have any questions from the Zoom audience, please let me know. Cool, so welcome. Would you mind just maybe introducing yourselves and, talking about your background? Oh.
Okay, so Jerry Glover, I was in the last cohort for the postgrad. Background, 25 years as a dairy farmer, and since then have been involved in various startup organisations in a general manager CEO type role. Have done some other previous study before this. So for me, the step into doing this was, I understood the whole process, so it was quite straightforward. Currently, I've just finished a 7-month contract for a startup here based in Auckland, so I live in Hamilton. So I am back at the drawing board, so to speak, and just starting off yet another idea.
It's all about this way. Nikki, I have never done any study. I actually left school at 7th form and had hospitality for 23 years. So you can imagine my lifestyle for 23 years. I came into here on a bit of a whim, hoping to just do something quite different. With hospitality, I'll jump back, sorry, with hospitality as my background, obviously the facade is extroversion, but inside you're introverted. And any job that I had was quite unique, but I vowed to creed I would never work in an office. So I wasn't going to sit behind a desk. I currently sit behind a desk and I love it. Because I'm dealing with technology, I'm dealing with people. I've always got a laptop, I've always got a phone, it's great, that I don't have to buy myself. But coming into this course, I was able to grasp a human environment and learn about the transformation that can occur within a human environment and the impact that people have. I thought you were just the girl in the office or the guy in the office. And you didn't really have an impact, but absolutely everything you do has an impact, whether it's with digital or whether it's transactional on a daily basis. And this course really, really opened my eyes and flipped all my thinking on its head about that type of impact that you have.
Awesome. Well, my next question was, what was your experience?
Oh.
I think you covered it, Nikki.
Sorry.
Yeah, over to you, Jerry. What did you find the course?
So what led me here was my husband and I have been overseas pretty much for about 3 years sailing, and so when we got back here, I really had lost all my sort of networks, my relevancy, and to a large degree had really lost contact with New Zealand as a society and economy because we've been so transient living overseas. But the other thing is that when you're in the sailing environment, you're in very challenging conditions. You actually learn a lot about yourself, and at times it's quite raw, and the version of yourself sometimes is not necessarily what you think. And so at my age, that was sort of quite confronting. So when I got back, I didn't want to stop learning, but I wasn't really quite sure how to get back into having some relevancy in society. So I saw this program advertised and thought it really appealed to me, because having done previous study that always looked back, I liked this because it looked forward. It looked at what was coming down the tunnel at us as a society in New Zealand. And having been away for so long, I thought it would give me a really fresh perspective of what was happening and where I could fit in. And so for me, it was just a step back into rebuilding my networks, getting my knowledge back up, and actually really challenging some of my preconceived ideas around some of the subject matter, which it definitely did sometimes, which is good. It's if you don't challenge your thinking, then I think you can hold on to your beliefs that then hold you back. It's not always comfortable, and you don't always like it. And there was 1 or 2 sessions that really made me get off and think, I've really had that thought since I was, a child, and that's how I was brought up. Is that still relevant today? So for me, it was probably the most insightful learning I've done to date. I've done quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't done. I mean, I went to school to eat my lunch, clearly. But coming into this type of study, I think I really, really enjoyed what I felt was the academic side of it, was learning how to write and the support that we had as well. But it was learning how to write and learning what to write, and having a whole new perception or a whole new lens on the learning transaction as it was. For someone who hasn't studied before, I think the type of learning just lends itself to have things sink in a lot better, especially as an adult student as well. Coming in as an older person, the study itself is something that's so applicable in everyday life. It's not, you learn a degree and 3 years you jump out and you go, oh, and you're behind the times already. Whereas this is so forward thinking and so innovative and so advanced but relevant at the same time. You kind of get to feel like you're really in the mix, like you're really in a mix that's working and that's relevant, and your conversation is more relevant, and the learning that you have, you can impart so much more knowledge because of the conversations that you have with people. It's fascinating.
I think that relevancy is really important because, it's through some of the sessions that we had, you have this preconceived idea that nobody's really doing anything with 3D printers because no one in your circle is doing anything with 3D printers. But when you start to investigate it, and I just helped someone with a business plan based on a 3D printer, and it was because of the conversations we had, because of what I had learned in the program, and then had done some further online investigation, that I was like, wow, everybody has these things, look at everything they do. I really learned a lot, and then was able to help somebody formulate a business plan in using it, which I wouldn't have done because I would have thought it was America, big companies, just not really happening here. So again, it was very relevant.
And the rabbit holes. Oh my God, the rabbit holes you fall down researching is ridiculous. 2 o'clock in the morning, I've got to get to work in the morning, like in 3 hours. But yeah, the rabbit holes you fall down researching, it just opens your eyes up. It just opens everything up.
So, we spoke about, the subject matter experts who come in to deliver the sessions, and some of you guys might be looking at it, you know, AI, machine learning, IoT, is it a lot, you know, is it going to go over my head? And I've heard, you know, like that is the experience that some people might feel. So, you know, is there any advice that you can impart on, you know, how do you tackle those, you know, sessions on, especially around like emerging disruptive technologies, you know, how have you found, like, is there a management strategy into, you know, did you revisit content afterwards to kind of when it became relevant as you were developing your theoretical but actual plan? Like how did you manage that process?
Do you want to lead on this one? No? Okay. How did I manage?
Do you want me to go?
By way of, yeah.
Okay.
Let me formulate something.
Okay, so for me, because I wasn't working, I had the time and luxury to go back often the next day and revisit. Because, you know, for me, my cohort was all online. So 4 to 7 at night and for me personally, is not the best time of the day. I'm an early morning person. So
we've changed the program based on feedback as well. So it's a little bit different now.
Yeah, that's switching now.
Yeah, why now? So I would often go back the next day and just quickly revisit the slides. And then I had a book. Because I like to take notes and write everything down. I would just go through and refresh my memory. And then, but for me, the notes and everything is still all available online. So I have since gone back and revisited some sessions as they've become appropriate, as things have popped up in my business life that I think, oh, that's right, I learned about that. Or I might be talking to someone from the cohort and they'll say, oh, we had that session from that lady. And I think, oh, that's right, we did too. So it is quite a valuable resource to keep going back, but I did try to visit the next day if the day after, because it is a lot to take in. And if you don't, especially for me at the end of the day, you know, I just became a bit Teflon after a while with some of the information that was being thrown at me.
So get that. So get that. I mean, there are, with any sort of study or with any sort of using your brain after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it just turns to custard. But the resources and going back on the portal and using the portal and the taping of the sessions and the extra slides and that sort of thing, it's just all there. It's all there as backup. So you're never not informed. I never felt as though I didn't know what I was doing. I never felt as though I was uninformed at any stage. I'm a little bit, I can't write to save myself. So I was tapping away as the presenters were talking. I was tapping away and taking notes there, and then when I got home from the session, or if it was an online session, we were blended. You were fully online.
Fully online.
So we were blended. We had, although COVID hit halfway through ours, because we were the first cohort, we pivoted. Everyone loved that word. We had to pivot. And some of it was online, and then some we had face-to-face as well. And of course, the workshops that we came for our assessments and presented for our assessments as well. But when the presenters were there, it was easy to just tap away, and then the next day you sort of go over it. I think there's a certain amount of personal discipline that has to occur. For me, not knowing how to study really, and not having that experience of study historically, I actually had to learn to put time aside to go over and unpack what I'd learned, because it's quite a lot in one session. And you do close down the laptop after a Zoom and go, oh my God, I have so many questions. Where do I start and who do I call? And you guys were always either online on a call, or it's up to, I felt it was up to us to contact our cohorts and speak with each other. If you have a question, that's the really cool thing about the cohorts. When they start having that shared learned experience too, they can contact each other. And that was my support as well, was speaking with the rest of my cohort.
Nikki, can you talk a little bit about, you know, the friendships and the relationships that you have formed in your cohort? Because that was a very special cohort.
It was very special, yeah.
Being cohort number 1 as well, you know, the guinea pigs of this course. So
Yeah.
you want to just talk about those relationships?
Really diverse backgrounds. I mean, actually, Rachel and Gordon were on my cohort, so they were on my first cohort. So I know them very, very well. We've had one dinner so far, and we've got another one coming. and they're an absolute blast. We just bonded, I think, really, really quickly with, even though we're so diverse. There was one lady who has worked in HR, and she's done a master's, she's done a PhD, and she's done an MBA, and she's still studying now. And obviously a very intelligent woman. So she was really insightful. Brett from sustainability, he was incredibly insightful and deep. And then we had Rachel, who was a dancer and was creative and flowy, and so all the personalities just blended, and it was just a really beautiful space. And when we came together on workshops, it was like being with people you'd known for 20 years. It was exceptional. It was, I think because of the shared experience and because of the change, the paradigm shifts that you go through, when you share that experience with a group of people, it's quite exceptional, it's quite special, it's something that you'll take with you. I think it's long lasting.
Yeah. And I know, Jerry, you know, as a response to COVID, that's why we had to go fully online, and based on, you know, the feedback that we've got, it's really important to have those face-to-face days. And so that's why, you know, in the program structure going forward, we've had those 4 on-site days where you come in for a full day to have those interactions with your cohort, and that starts from day 1. But from an online, you know, learning environment, you know, is there any wisdom you can part with us to make that kind of work for you?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit before the session. I think that you learned as an organisation a lot about how to help us as a group integrate better. It's very easy at the end of the day to turn your camera off, and then it makes it really hard to engage with people. And sometimes at the end of the day, you know, you might not be looking your best, and it is really easy to turn your camera off. I know that. We've all done it. I'm not saying, you know, I've done it as well. That's quite challenging. Also, you know, we all find sometimes some of the sessions bring up something that might not sit with us in a personal sense, or somebody might say something that you would quite like to take that discussion further. It's quite hard to online, and the last thing you want to do is let it get out of hand or offend, or, you know, it's much easier face to face because you've got the whole body language thing, and it's much easier to sort of say, oh, look, I'm sorry, you've misunderstood me. Whereas in an online environment, that can be somewhat more tricky. So therefore you tend not to ask, or, you know, you're tired and you think, you know, I just can't frame that I can't get it across nicely, so I won't ask at all, you know. So I think there are definitely challenges with that online. It's also quite hard to build up that relationship with more than sort of 1 to 2 to 3 people on the course. When you have your breakout room, you sort of tend to end up with the same people, or you just end up in a group. It's quite hard to do the assignments when everybody is remote all the time. Again, there's so much value in that sitting across the table. But I mean, I was very lucky with both my groups. They were great, but other people didn't have such great experiences. And it takes quite a great leadership style to pull a group together that don't know each other online to then get a really effective assessment where everybody feels that they've contributed, had the opportunity to contribute, but also sort of like be made to contribute at the same time, because there's always someone, there's always someone that would write the whole assignment, if, you know, probably be me. So yeah, there's lots of challenges that arose that I never thought about when I first signed up and thought it was online.
And I think, like you said, you know, as an organisation, we have responded to that, you know, so we've brought in the blended model where you have that, you know, on site. And it is one of those programs where you get out of it as much as you give. So, you know, like you know, even if you are in a session where you may not necessarily agree with the subject matter expert because of your own lived experiences, your own perspectives, you might have your blinders on without even knowing, you know, have that conversation, ask that question, because they're there to, you know, play in that tension with you as well. And if you have that question, it's very likely that other people will have the same question, you know, so it's building those relationships are really important with your cohort members and creating that safe space. And we're there to kind of help facilitate that, you know, that safe environment. You know, we do have a very strict code of conduct now, you know, to say, you know, all videos on, and obviously, you know, we're humans, we understand, we don't mind seeing pets in the background, you know, messy, that's all good with us. You're here to learn, and yeah, absolutely, and critically engage with the, you know, the content and the conversations. I mean, that's what we're here for. So we hope that, you know, with the changes that we've made as well to make it blended, you know, it's really enriching that experience. And our current cohort, cohort 3, are having a fantastic experience because, you know, those on-site days really matter. So, you know, engagement matters to us, you know, attendance matters to us. So we track that very closely. But also we understand that life happens as well. So, you know, we're adaptive in ourselves. You know, we respond to feedback quite quickly, and we adapt and change. And that's the beauty of being part of an organization that is agile as well. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your experiences with the 2 different models as well. You know, so we talk about this theoretical but actionable plan. You know, do you want to talk a little bit about what that looked like for you in terms of, you know, the assessments and what you kind of walked away from with the program?
I actually walked away with something really applicable, which was really, really good. The first thing I did was resign from my job, which was great because of the shift. I just wasn't, it was great. It was so liberating. So I resigned and was able to take what the plan that I created, or the outcome from the course, into my next role. I've never, my challenge or my problem that I wanted to solve was onboarding, which is I've never had a decent induction or an onboarding in any company, ever. So I wanted to create something that would work. So what I came up with was an engagement model, and which involved a myriad of things, along with better building and making sure the environment was safe for people, that people had somewhere to go to speak with, and the checklists and things for onboarding was all ticked off. I basically did the opposite to everything I'd ever experienced with an onboarding, and then put that into a thesis. And it seemed to work really, really well. And I was able to take that and put that into my next role. And they're still using it now, which is really cool. But the only thing I didn't do was the building modules, because there was actually a fake module that was about the building and the restructure of an office space and how it was going to be more personable for people. So that was the only one I didn't really implement because it needed quite a bit of funding. So the onboarding itself is still working, and they're still inducting people now using my thesis. So it was certainly something that I could take away and literally apply, and I can apply it wherever I go. And I've tweaked it as I go along, which is great.
Awesome.
So it's probably taken me a little while to really understand what the takeaway has been, and I've done a few. I've done one consultancy job with this lady that I talked about, helping with this 3D knitting proposal. I also was in a startup that had a tentative 7-month contract, and I decided after doing the course that it wasn't my home for a lot of reasons, so I also resigned. I don't think it's common, don't panic, you're not going to do the course and everybody throw their job in.
Actually, that's cool.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, I'll take that back. It wasn't in our group. But I guess my key take home was that everything that I learned in the course was all sort of came back to change. And we as a society really struggle with that word. We're inherently, built, hardwired to every time someone talks about change, we just become sort of passive aggressive against it almost. Not many people really embrace it and turn towards it. And when I thought about my career and all the different things I've done, it has been something that I've done a lot of, and I'm not afraid of change, and I'm not afraid of stepping out there and trying new things. So what I have then thought about that and spoken to a couple of people, and I'm now also doing some further study on becoming a reinvention coach. So it's a program out of America, and it's designed to help companies understand how to pivot their offering before the balance sheet gets into trouble. So it sits really well with me. It sits really well with everything that I've learned in all my previous study, my 4 startups that I've been involved in, the challenges that I can see, the resistance to change, the resistance to pivoting, everything. And I think if we can, if I can come up with this, get my head around this system through this extra training and education that I'm doing, then there's an opportunity to help companies recognise it sooner in terms of their life cycle, incorporate some of the learnings that I've learned through here and other study, and help them reinvent themselves to become stronger and actually turn and face into the chaos, because never at a time in history have we been faced with so much change on many levels. You know, everybody knows it. You know, there's technology challenges, there's geopolitical, there's social unrest, there's environmental, there's financial. You know, we've just personally and from a business perspective, it's coming at us constantly. And when we don't like it, we tend to shut down. So we have to learn how to turn and face into it. And if it's one thing, I think that my big take home from the course was change is here. And everything I read, whether it be from a global McKinsey's report, everything points back to change. And I think in New Zealand, we have to become better at adapting to change, because our isolation means that we just have to do things so much better than what we've done in the past. And because we've been lucky that COVID has not hit us as like it has in other countries, have we slipped a little bit back into BAU? You know, and is there still turmoil coming down the track for us and a lot of companies? So I just need to get on and do my study. And, yeah. So it's taken me a little while to get my head around it. But I'm quite excited actually. I feel like it's a really good outcome for me.
I really agree with that change too. When you say change is here, because the course opens your eyes to how much change really is here.
Yes.
Because the more conversations you have with people, they go, oh, you know, that's 5 years away, or that's it's so not. It's right here, and it's right now, and that's how relevant all this is.
Well, I know a few of the audience members have already signed up for the next intake, and some people are thinking about it still. So is there any, parting advice, when you're preparing for the course? Any advice that you would give?
Open your mind. Just open your mind.
Yeah.
Just be ready to just learn and take on things, really. Read. Fall down the rabbit holes. If someone suggests something, don't go, yeah, but that might not happen, or research it and have a look, because it's really, really surprising what's out there, and it just opens your eyes. But yeah, open mind, I think it's key. Play with it.
Sorry. 2 comments. For me, I got 3/4 of the way through the program and the wheels fell off with a family wedding and work and an assignment, and then the wheels fell off in a spectacular way. And so, the Tech Futures Lab were really understanding, as opposed to my other more structured university studies where that's the deadline and every day you don't get it in, you get penalised. When I contacted Mahishi and said, look, I'm just going downhill fast here, I'll do my best, but this is where I'm at. If you could please give me 2 weeks, then, and we kept in constant contact that whole time. I'm on track, I'll get it to you in 2 weeks. It was very reassuring. So if that's a concern that, you might have other things in life take over, Tech Futures are very understanding. It's nowhere near as rigid as where I've been. And my other final thing I'd like to say, maybe it's not final, but is, there's a saying that I think is really relevant, and I heard it a long, long time ago, and that's, people often say that person is lucky. And I heard a presentation on it by someone at an agricultural conference, which seems a funny place to have this discussion. But the presenter was really big on the fact that luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And sometimes, I've done things and done online courses and things because I've thought it was appropriate and it might not have quite fitted in. But you never stop learning, and I'm always drawing on what I've previously learned. and you never know when that opportunity opens that door, and you actually say, I can do that because I have done this preparation. So I think you can't underestimate that in today's society. And, you know, I think about our little grandsons, and, you know, they'll be doing jobs that they don't even have a title. You know, that was another thing that really made me think about where the world is going. You know, this lady I'm helping with her 3D knitting concept, I wouldn't have even thought of that 12 months ago. I wouldn't have even thought about even having a go at buying some cryptocurrency, you know, all these things that I've stepped into because I've done the preparation and I've got the knowledge.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So that concludes like the list of questions that I had for you. So we might open up the floor and
Yeah, I have a question around, you talked quite a bit, both of you, about change management and also hitting, you know, when talking to people, them going, yeah, that's not the case. So I'm still a little bit blurry on the actual content of the course. So if you have an example where, say, you would encounter that environment in your business or your organization or someone you talk to, what would have been an item from the course that would have prepared you for that and would have helped you? So if you could describe that kind of session or that learning experience a little bit that prepared you for that.
I think as far as change goes, it was changing the behaviour and the mentality around my particular company and electric vehicles. It's being in construction, it's all very male dominated and everyone's got a ute and it has to be a diesel ute because it carries stuff and that's just not the way we want to roll, that we need to roll. So it was changing that mentality and getting electric cars into it. So for me, that's changed. That's right here. That's right now. That's making sure that they're relevant and they're doing the right thing as well, and also getting them into Twitter, which is carbon reduction.
And so how would the course have helped you to get that person moved over?
I wouldn't have known about the technology available or how to speak about it. It was learning. It was the research and the presentations and then putting it all together to be able to speak to the content that I needed to present to him or the board to be able to get them to move. I wouldn't have been able to eloquently present in the way that I was able to and get them to have that paradigm shift without being able to speak of really being able to deep dive into the content and what was required to get the electrical vehicles on track.
And I had a similar experience in the company I was working for, and that they were dealing with DNA extraction. And so I was very keen for the company to draw up an artificial intelligence policy because they didn't have one, and I don't think they clearly understood the magnitude of what they were doing. The founder understood the process, but I don't think she was really open to the fact that it could be misconstrued, and the last thing we wanted to do was end up on the front page of the Herald, because it's a company that was a startup in the New Zealand space. So all it took would be for someone to take a different angle on it and write the article. Whether the article's right or wrong, it's out there in the public arena. So I found that was something I hadn't even thought about. I'd thought about all the policies we needed to write. I'd never thought about that. So I learned about that. I went back to the tutor that took that session, and they were really helpful. The stumbling block I had was getting it over the line with the founder and the organisation, and I didn't have any luck with that at all. So that was probably my challenge, was how do you get that change?
How you get that buy-in.
Yeah. And I still really struggled. It's one of the reasons why I'm not working for the company.
And you know, so this bit of information is also available on the information pack that's available on the website that kind of focuses a little bit more about those topics that we cover, you know, but again, you know, we've spoken about this a little bit. These subject matter experts are there to kind of give you that level of knowledge where you can have those conversations with the people that, you know, you need to have those conversations with. But I've also had the question asked from me saying, you know, I see that you have a session on like blockchain. So am I being tested on this? It's not that kind of course, you know, so you take what you need from it, but you also are given those talking points, I guess, that knowledge where, say, one of your friends or someone that you meet down the line is talking about blockchain, and you can kind of understand that technology to have that kind of intelligent conversation, I suppose, and see where you can apply yourself and your knowledge. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Opens up conversations.
Yes, it does.
Really
And
does.
then all of a sudden you learn something and you think, oh, wow, I could do that. I could do that with this. Or I could talk to that person about that. But if you didn't have that knowledge, you're not in that position to even think about having that conversation.
Yeah, and like you said, Jerry, it builds that network. You know who to go to, and then later down in the line, even as a graduate, you know, you have that contact point that the network that you've created. And often in the master's program as well, you know, people are working with these people now on their projects. You know, they're part of the project, and so that's kind of the beauty of, you know, building that network and having those conversations with these subject matter experts, and you kind of pull in the subjects as you need as your, you know, project develops as well.
It's not just the experts too. It's actually, sorry.
I'm very interested in systemic change. So concept work in your, you know, advertising around big picture thinking, collaboration, partnerships across nationally and internationally. So some of the examples that we've seen here are, you know, small business, and you know, it's great. Where does that fit in? Where does the more systemic?
I think it really depends on where you want to take the course. It as an individual, I think it matters as an individual. So, you know, it's all about, you know, we're focusing on your human potential. And so, you know, if you communicate to us, you know, through the assessments, through the conversations we have, what you are hoping to achieve on the program, then we will, you know, work with you to facilitate, to get to that goal and to create those connections and those conversations that you need to have, because, you know, take Futures Lab beyond this program. So we have a suite of program offerings, and also where, you know, like we sit side by side with the Mind Lab, which is our sister organization. And Nikki is actually doing the leading Change for Good postgraduate program. So we have all these really interesting people. It's kind of like a hub of connection. And so, you know, it really depends on where you want to take your project and what you want to achieve. And we kind of facilitate that for you, depending on, you know, your goals for the program.
Mahishi, I'm having a couple of questions that are coming through quite loudly. One is, how do you juggle parenthood in this program? There's a lot of parents and with children and trying to manage that with study and taking on a course.
It's not a big chunky day. It's actually, it's not going into a classroom 9 to 4. Do you know what I mean? It's 2 hours stint, or it's the workshop days is a full day, which you can wrangle because there's plenty of notice you can plan for it. But obviously it depends on the ages of the kids as well, and the timing of the courses.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on that context that you're going to focus on. Really make sure it's something that you're passionate about, because with all our programs that we offer, we don't want it to just be a piece of paper that you walk away from. It has to be transformative for you. It has to, you know, we're all about that human impact, and the technology kind of follows that, and it's a facilitator of that impact. So, you know, as long as you're passionate about what you're going to focus on for the program, I feel like those hurdles, you know, you kind of work through it. For example, like I had a chat with a woman who wants to do, you know, the upcoming cohort in September. She's giving birth in November. And so it's sort of like, you know, so what are your capabilities and how can we work with you to support that? Because you have the drive, you have the passion, you see the application and relevance of the program. And who am I as a woman to stand in your way of that because you're having a baby? So obviously, you know, sleep deprivation is very real as a new mom. So I have a 3.5-year-old. But, you know, this is a third child. And so it's sort of like, you know, tell us what we need to do to support you, but, you know, make sure that you have that passion, because it's the passion that will really drive through those hurdles. And you spoke about a little bit about that, Jerry, you know, like the wedding and everything else that's going on in your life. But we are flexible in the way that what we really care about is that you're critically engaging with the content, and, you know, the end goal is really up to you and how you shape that.
And that was another question, was how supported did you feel through the program? Should anything come up, do you feel like the team is there for you?
That's interesting you brought that up, because I was just going to follow on from what you just said. The support is ridiculous. It's like I said, I've never felt uninformed. There was always someone I could ask, whether it be just on Slack. You just even if you're down a rabbit hole and you find something and you go, but what about this? And what can I do with this? Or how might we put this together for this? And someone will come back to you always. Like there's and you don't wait for 3 days for a response like from directors. You actually get responses back, and they're applicable to what you really want, and they can lead you in a whole other direction. So the support's phenomenal. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but it all boils down to your openness and communication. You know, the minute you see, if you are getting into that position where the wheels are falling off, then, you know, you just got to put your hand up and be honest about it, because these things in life sometimes are a bit unforeseen. I thought I had everything under control, from it. But, you know, I mean, everything got back on track pretty quickly, but it meant that I missed a deadline for an assignment. And as I said, you know, at university days, that would be it. You know, 35% of my mark would be gone. But, you know, this Futures Lab were amazing. So it just boils down to communication, most things in life.
Yeah, and it's a different type of study too. It's not like university.
It's more self-directed.
The idea is your learning outcome. The idea is your growth and your transformation and your paradigm shift. And it's not you didn't do well, or you didn't write this. It's not condescending. It's such a growth mindset. It just takes you on a whole different journey.
And I guess that goes into another question that we have, which is, what does this weekly study time involve? Is it content consumption? Is it action learning? Is it research? What does it entail?
It's a little bit of everything,
It's up to you. You know, it's up to you. I mean, to be honest, there were some weeks where it just didn't push my buttons, right? So I would listen to the session and I'd be like, yeah, cool. I don't think I'm even really going to need that. Maybe I might spend half an hour having a look at the notes, but, you know, not every one of those will appeal to everybody, and some are more appealing. So you are naturally drawn to look into and investigate things that
go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, exactly. That are more applicable. Or you think, wow, I didn't know anything about that. I really want to learn more. So again, it's very self-directed. There's no one standing over you saying, you haven't done your 1.5 hours this week. You know that you haven't, but nobody else does. You know, it's the same old story. You get out of it what you put into it. And yeah, I think that sums it up really in my view.
And how the assessments are assessed is it's a competency-based, you know, marking system. What that means is you don't get a percentage grade, because everyone's focus and their context is so different. So it would be impossible for us to kind of allocate a percentage. So you get pass with requirements, pass with recommendations, or are not yet competent, which means, you know, you get the opportunity to resubmit your assessment. But what it also means that it's very feedback heavy. So after each assessment, so you get 2 formative assessments and a summative assessment in the first 16-week block. and the pattern continues for the second 16-week block. And the formatives are kind of your opportunity to test, practice, to pitch ideas, and then you get feedback on that, and then you build on that feedback, and then the summative is kind of what goes towards your credits and your grade. And so, yeah, can you maybe talk about the feedback that you get from your assessments?
So one that really springs to mind for me was an assignment, and my feedback, I had to do an oral presentation, and it was at the time when I had missed the deadline, so I was doing a one-on-one, and the feedback actually turned into a really great discussion where I could ask further questions for clarification. You know, I wasn't sure about this when I wrote it in the assignment. What do you think? Do you think I could have done this a better way? Do you think I could do more research on this? Where do I go for that research? So even though I had submitted the assignment, I still was able to learn from it. It was not like at university, you submit the assignment, you get a mark and that's it. And you never know if you get 51%, well, what could have I done to have got 81%? You don't know. And sometimes you genuinely do not know. You know, you just struggle to get your head around the concepts. Here it was quite different. And again, the feedback was a learning process in itself. Nothing to be daunted over at all. I mean, it's not a big deal. I don't mean it like it's not a big deal, but it's not something to be really concerned about.
There's one clarifying question as well. On our presentation, it says that the workshops will be on Tuesdays, but in our program book, it actually says Mondays. So which day is it actually?
So the workshop days are on Mondays. It might have the old cohort timings as well. So just make sure that you're looking at the September intake. But yeah, we'll clarify that.
Yeah, clarify the times, because I thought we had an assessment due and it was 2 weeks after we first got the assessment. So I had to call them up and go, is this date right? And it wasn't right. It was for the next go. So yeah, if you've got a question, just ask. But it's always, and I think that taught me something too. I've not really been the type to ask. I've been the type to just smile and wave and go, yep, okay. But this has actually also brought about asking questions, because you don't know what you don't know. And once you learn to know, you can learn to ask the right questions as well. So it's asking those right questions to learn as well. Just sort of trick.
Yes.
Just like the previous micro-credential year as well, that was very much around reflective kind of learning. So you write your reflections and it's peer assessed. So is the assessment done by peers as well as TFL, or how does that work?
You mean the like how the assessments are? Yeah, so we have a panel of assessors, and how the assessment works is each assessment gets 2 markers assigned, and then they go through that, and then we meet as an assessment and moderation panel, and then we moderate all the comments and the markings that go into your feedback form, and that's how it's kind of presented to you. And something that's different from the master's program to the PG Cert is that, you know, in the master's you get an advisor who guides you through, you know, the master's project, because it's a research project. But here, because you don't have that, you know, assigned advisor, you are given the opportunity to speak with someone on the assessment panel to discuss the feedback that you've received, you know, talk about, you know, what you need to work on for your summative assessment or anything that you need to flesh out on. Does that answer your question?
In terms of the NZQA qualifications, this is a postgraduate certificate. How is that different to a postgraduate diploma?
Oh, that's a bit of a question that I would need to consult on as well. Yeah.
We'll get back to that for a second.
Yeah, I think it's a time allocated.
Right.
And the
It might
credits.
come down to the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe you require a thesis semester or something like that. Extra 80 points or something.
We'll look into that.
Any other questions from the audience members here?
Nikki, I'm curious, how far into the program did you land on the onboarding pieces as being your area of focus? And I guess more generally, you know, do people come in with an idea straight away of what they want to focus on, or is it more as they work through the program that it kind of crystallizes?
Yes. Yes. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I had no expectations. I came in super green, obviously, with no study behind me. But it was just something I'm fairly passionate about. My jam in general is organisational transformation. I like change, thrive on change, and being able to go be in an organisation and create that change and flow behavioural is my jam. So as it progressed and something came up, I actually only stumbled across that in the last little bit, if I'm really honest, but it just seemed to come together. When I got to the point where it was in the second 16 week, because it was the summative at the end anyway, but when it hit the second 16 week, things started gelling. Crystallize is a great word. It really just started coming together, and I knew I could apply not just what I've learned, but what I had researched and what I'd spoken with people about, their expectations. I could put something together, and it just kind of worked. It just came together, and it's something that's implementable, which is very cool. It's very exciting.
And I know people have changed their minds. They've pivoted into another industry or decided that, you know, their context, a shift in context, I suppose. It's like they initially thought they'll align it with something that they're currently, you know, facing in their current workplace. But then as you discover and go through the sessions, you know, there might be a session on circular economy that really sparks your interest, and you might decide to change. To say, I want to know more about that and base my context and my assessment on that, so I can deep dive and really, you know, apply that critical thinking, and that's happened as well.
It's the critical thinking, but it's also where you can find the impact. For me, it was all about impact, and it was all about finding something that I could really, really apply and also make a real positive impact and do something, or get people to do something well. Because onboarding's just poops everywhere. It really is. And there's a lot of organisations out there that really need to revisit that and do it well, because human impact and humans now, the world is completely different, and we need to be really aware of the impact that we're having, how we're looking, how we're responding, how we're speaking with, how we're behaving with each other in a workplace. And you can also take that home as well. But something like onboarding is so significant. It's that very first thing. So I'm really passionate about it. So it's that really first image of you that you get from a company. And I went from fintech to construction in the middle of it all, which is ripe for change. So I'm having a blast right now, especially with and the postgraduate one is the leading change for good. And then the organisational agility one after that. So
she's just working through.
I'm just working my way through the sweets right now.
So I'm just conscious of time, so we might take one or two more questions from the audience. Yeah.
What kind of resources do you have access to?
So we have a library offering as well, but if there's any access issues or any articles that you need access to, then we can kind of, you know, source that out like for you as well. But we have a specific session which one of our national academic directors go through, you know, the resources and how to access the resources that we have available.
There is basically no resources that aren't accessible. You can get everywhere. That's amazing. Mentally, it's really good.
I guess there's a question around relating to what we spoke about previously. Is it expected that we would have an idea in mind before going into the program, and when are our proposals determined in the program?
I think I might just speak to the structure of, you know, the assessment. So with the first formative assessment that you have is a group activity. So you're given a case study And then you kind of deep dive into that particular organization that you're given, and then you address those 4 key themes and, the assessment criteria. So that should hopefully, spark your interest and curiosity and what your context might look like. And then also, be mindful that you're interacting with people across a range of industries and disciplines as well. So that might shape your thinking as well. And then, the second set of assessments, the same deal. So the first formative assessment is that group activity where you look at, now that you understand digitization and the impact of it, and then how has this organization, what strategies have they implemented as a response to, digitization? So hopefully that could spark your curiosity as well. But, how did you both kind of navigate to, that context piece? And I think we've somewhat addressed it in the answers that you provided in the previous, the question, but yeah.
Just trying to think what I did. I think I did my final assessment on the startup company that I was working for, because it was one that I was involved in and it made sense. And at that stage, I was probably starting to get a few sort of warnings about whether it was my right space for me or not. And working through the assessment actually made me probably decide it wasn't. But I mean, people did, organisations that they were involved in, or people did ideas that they had, people did not-for-profits, people did things that were completely unrelated to their day-to-day life. I had no idea. And when I started the study, I wasn't actually working. And I got this opportunity to do this 7-month contract because I was doing the study. So I started with no idea about what I was going to do at the end. But I just hoped that by looking at all these different opportunities, that something would just fit and I would find something that interested me that I would, do my final assessment on. But I just don't think it's something to really worry about. It's the process. And if you do something that is not relevant for you, that you decide you've still gone through that process, you've still done the learning, and I still think that you definitely get things out of it. I wouldn't get worried about the fact that I didn't have it,
A thing.
No, lots of people didn't have a thing.
I had about 20 things and I was still tossing up the 20 things even when I finished. I was still tossing up the 20 things. So I wasn't really concrete, but it came together so well I just ran with that. I might still do the other 20.
Yeah. So we might just wrap up just in the interest of time. And of course, we have time to mingle over drinks and, food. And so just, reach out to me or Nikki or Jerry, hopefully you'll hang around for a little bit to ask those, any other questions that you might have as well. So we do have this New Zealand Productivity Scholarship in play for the next intake. So I won't read that blurb out for you, but it is a unique opportunity where 100% of your fees are covered. And so there are 40 places available on that scholarship for this the upcoming intake. So if you're thinking about it, make sure that you put your applications through. Once we hit that number, you'll go into kind of like a wait list. And we'll decide next steps. So if you are thinking about the program for the September intake, please get your applications out ASAP. There's terms and conditions, but everything's detailed on the website. And the application process, you are required to submit a statement of intent, and that's reviewed before you are given a place, an offer on to the program. So any questions on that? Right, so just a reminder about the scholarship. So the next intake is starting on the 20th of September. Applications closed on the 13th of September, so a week before the start date. There's the link to apply on the website, and if you want to schedule a chat with me, that's my contact details, but that's available on the website as well. Cool. And so I might just close off with a closing karakia. So ka wakairia ti tapu, kia watia ai tia ara, kia turuki whakatahia ai, kia turuki whakatahia ai, Homie, huye, tai kie. So kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time and for everyone who's joined online on Zoom as well. So if there are questions that are coming through, so Amanda, I'm sure you've noted them down. So we might just do a follow-up email if there are any FAQs coming through. And I will send you through a copy of the presentation as well. So yeah, so it's time to relax and, digest the information, and we'll hang around if there's any other questions that you have.